Good afternoon. I'd like to start out with a quote, something that Prime Minister said a year ago, exactly a year ago. You cannot bring a political program at the eve of elections without having a mandate for that. And now we can see that the government of Israel intends to advance a month before the elections to promote a pretty dramatic plan. Do you think that this government and the person heading this government, do they have the legitimacy to promote these measures at such timing? First of all, we always have elections here, so that can create a problem. But if we shall talk about the matter itself, I hear and I know, just like everybody sitting here knows, that this is a subject that there's broad national consensus over it, especially if we're talking about exercising our sovereignty over the Jordan Valley. We heard the main two parties on the political map, and therefore I would define it in the following way. Political decisions, you do not reach through international consensus or in peaceful times. There are some chances, there are opportunities that are one-off opportunities in which you need leadership and decisiveness, and I'm very happy that Netanyahu is doing this. But this administration, the friendly administration that published the deal of the century, they'll still be there next month, and maybe the consensus will still remain next month. So why rush? Why not bring this for the people to decide on it in the upcoming elections in a month's time? You said maybe and maybe not. You know, things change in life, and I am hearing everything that people are saying and what people are threatening. For example, regarding the Jordanian issue, I mean, the Jordanians, once they already felt that there's an intifada here back in 88 and they were afraid that it would reach them, they immediately said, we concede all our demands in the West Bank. And it's not an easy thing to do. This is a place that they had occupied since 1948 until then, and they decided to give up on that, to concede. And when I look at that place that they conceded, now they come to us and they say, you should do this, you should do that. The state of Israel fought in order to hold on to this place, and it has strategic importance, and that's the most important thing. So the state of Israel needs to take measures there without coordinating with the Jordanians, even if it's risking the peace accords with Jordan. On the contrary, let me complete what I'm saying here. When we look to the east, ladies and gentlemen, this is reality from Iran at the east, and then Iraq, Jordan, that I'll soon talk about, all the way to Jerusalem. We're talking about 1,500 kilometers that are filled with enemies except for Jordan. And I look at Iranian activities in the Middle East, they dominate Lebanon through their agent, through their proxy Hezbollah. They also dominate some great territories in Iraq through the militias, the Shiite militias, and now they're trying to take over Syria. And the next chain is Jordan. It already has 2 million refugees from Syria and Iraq, and therefore the state of Israel must create a reality in which it has a depth. We are at the banks of the Jordan, and our security space is up to the mountains, and the essential territory that this protects is that triangle. That one part, the one point in it is Jerusalem, and the other is Haifa, and also Ashkelon. And this is where 5 million Jews live, and we need to defend that area. In this context, I have no doubt that this is not just about the rights of, our historic right, which is important. We're not just talking about our struggle against the Palestinians. We're talking about Israel's strategic depth, but is it worth the tension with Jordan and the damage to the relations with Jordan, as we keep hearing certain warnings from Amman in recent weeks. I suggest we distinguish between talk that is intended for domestic purposes and interest. Jordan's most important ally in the world is Israel. Number two, if there's one thing that the Jordanians want, and this is what I started out with, is to have a separation between the Palestinians in Jordan and the Palestinians in Judea and Samaria. And when Israel places itself on a strip with an average width of 30 to 40 kilometers from the Jordan to the Alon axis. It serves not only its own interests but Jordanian interests as well. The fact that they don't say that out in the open to Jordanians, that's for other reasons. I suggest that threats about the peace accords, etc., they best leave that to their own domestic internal statements and not use that against Israel. Israel isn't acting against Lebanon, on the contrary, and against Jordan, on the contrary, and they know that. So you're saying that the deal of the century is a historic plan that the state of Israel needs to adopt and promote. I'm certain that we must advance the deal of the century. Let me tell you, moreover, the Palestinians did not accept the Peel partition plan in 37 or the UNSCO decisions that led to November 29 in 1947, neither the Rogers or any other plans throughout history, not to mention everything that happened in recent years. Therefore, I have no hope that the Palestinians will want anything, because until the Palestinians don't receive Tel Aviv, Sheikh Munis, which is the neighborhood we're sitting in right now, then they'll never agree. This is why we best stick to the index of Trump's deal of the century, not the Oslo index. If Benny Gantz will bring this plan to a vote next week in the Knesset, will you support it? I suppose that he won't bring this plan for a vote in the Knesset, and even political cynicism has its boundaries. I mean, to catch a hike 100 meters on the back of the Likud, that's okay. But to go all the way from Etula to Eilat on something that somebody else prepared, that's inconceivable. This is a program that is advanced by the Prime Minister. Will the Likud vote against it? Why discuss theoretical issues? This program was announced to the whole world by President Trump, and we'll make sure that this program is implemented, and I'll be very delighted if it will happen under full support of all the elements of Blue and White, including Ofer Shelach and Yael German. If it is fully implemented, what that means that in several years a Palestinian country will be established, at least on part of the territory. And what this means is that the Likud, the right wing, is adopting this plan and is recognizing the establishment of a Palestinian state. I suggest we don't get into semantics. For the Palestinians, some patience. I know where I am, but why aren't you patient with the other side's views? I understand. This program actually takes the basic idea that was presented in broad strokes in the Camp David Accords by the late Prime Minister Menachem Begin, that says an autonomy, because what you want to call a state on this side, it says a state. It doesn't say autonomy. Well, a state has traits, and it's true that it says traits, but what don't they have? They don't have a military, they don't have any control over the airspace, the EM space, and there is no control over the border, who comes in, who comes out. There are symbols, representative in the UN, a national anthem, a flag, that's fine, but when the way we see it, it's an autonomy. Had it been in the US, it would have been a state within the federation. They have no ability to strike alliances or anything else. So I don't have a problem with the statements. What this plan states is autonomy for the Palestinians. Decisions regarding policy, security, and all that, that's up to the State of Israel. Look, you want to take only the carrot of this plan, and already before the elections to promote the implementation of sovereignty. It seems that the administration or certain parts of it are giving you a red light. Do you think that you should continue to pursue that even despite the indications you've received from the administration, even though there are objections from the American administration, look, I am familiar with the security aspects of this plan before it was presented, not so much the other things. I haven't spoken with the Prime Minister after his return, and except from what I heard in the media, I'm not that familiar with the content. We will hear, we will look into this, and I'm convinced that anything that Israel decides to advance will be in close coordination and collaboration with the Americans. But right now, there's very strong pressure on Netanyahu from the right to submit it either to the government or the Knesset over the next few weeks. But we hear Jared Kushner saying, no, it shouldn't happen. And now, first of all, we need to establish a committee. Don't you fear that after all this build up to the annexation in recent days, it will give you electoral damage? Well, first of all, with my close familiarity, after many years, especially in recent years, I think that as everybody sees, he withstands pressure very well, in contrast to all the images that people are trying to fabricate. And you know, another thing, I look at the picture and I think that what's important is the essence, and the essence is to do the right thing whenever possible. The way I see it, it's already too late. This is something that we should have done many years ago, and especially if there is a consensus in Israel about that. And I'm not concerned by the fact that there is no international consensus. Had we been had we always been considerate of international consensus, then we would have remained in North Africa and Europe, and we wouldn't have had a country there. And on these matters is here. And I'd like to remind all the people who are with us and are sitting here, when in 1981 Menachem Begin brought the Golan Heights law, there was objection to it, even in the Knesset, except for several people who defected from the Labour Party who voted with the Likud. There was some serious international denouncing and even sanctions imposed by the American administration led by Reagan at the time. And today, 40 years after that, we have a de facto and de jure recognition of the American administration of our right and sovereignty over the Golan Heights. So it's important that we remember the facts. Everything I've said so far are facts. Well, we have the option to receive de facto and de jure recognition of the American administration within certain boundaries. Should we risk that by taking such a political move before elections, even though we're hearing from the White House that this is not the timing they approve of? Well, it has spoken, the White House, and the essence is the most important thing. And the essence is what transpired between the Prime Minister and President Trump in the presence of the media and representatives from many countries. That's the essence. Now, as for the technique and timing and what to do and when to do, I believe that this is the realization of something that is going to happen. We've seen the support from Britain, and I think it's extremely important, especially with the backdrop of everything that's happening. They are, you know, shedding some of the hypocrisy, the famous European hypocrisy. Maybe it's because of the Brexit. We need to be independent. This is something that has happened, and we're going to implement it just like we did with Jerusalem, the Golan Heights, and other places. Did you see the polls that were shown on the news yesterday? No. Okay, so I'll give you the blowdown. And it seems that despite all the dramas, and it has been a dramatic week with the deal of the century, there aren't any major shifts in the polls between the blocs. Do you think that in this upcoming month there's a chance for something that will really sway the vote? Do you think that you'll manage to reach a bloc of 61 seats? Well, I don't know. And also, I think that we were pretty close to achieving that in the elections in April. And if the Likud will be mobilized, there is a chance ultimately, when we look at the half line, the median line, the national median line, and where it passes, and out of 100, let's say 107 mandates that are divided between the Jewish parties, the reality is that we're talking about 65 to 67 who are on the right. Part of this right doesn't go with our bloc, but this, I cannot foresee it. I don't know how to resolve this, but if we're talking about the general public, their thoughts are similar to the Likud's. Let's say that the polls are not wrong. That's far-reaching. Polls are not wrong. Polls are not mistaken. they project what the great poll in September showed, and let's say there is a certain reliability coefficient because of the previous elections. But let's say that we will have another round of elections. Let's say that these are the polls, and people are starting to say that maybe there won't be any other choice but to go for another elections campaign. I'd like to suggest something. Could you present to us, let's say that what the polls are saying right now are true. What is Yoav's Galant outline for getting out of this political standstill? What could prevent a fourth election campaign? Well, with all due respect, I'm pretty new to the political system in comparison to all these experts, so let's leave that to prophets. Let me just tell you that we, as you all know, are living in the Middle East. Give me the option to say if twice, then I'll take you wherever you want on every subject, and everything I say will be true, whether it's internal relations, foreign relations. So the saying if something happens, if we do this, if we do that, we see the level of surprises we have in the Middle East, and we don't like this situation. Israel is suffering, the people of Israel are suffering, the government is paralyzed because of legal and other decisions. This is a reality that weakens Israel. Let me give you an example. I have been asking for over a year to bring 400 olim from Ethiopia in order to finish the quota of 1,000 that was decided in a government resolution between 2018 to 2019. And as I come to submit it, and we have the candidates, and we found the budget, and we are submitting a government resolution, but they're saying, no, this is elections period. If it's a matter of a month, 2 or 3, fine. But they've been waiting there for a year, and it seems like they'll have to wait for another 3 or 4 months. I think that this is, injustice, and there's no need for that. And these kind of things happen constantly in the dozens in this country. We must change this reality. Okay, so let's say everybody has a share and you'll be a Knesset member as well. What will you be willing to do in order to prevent the option of a fourth elections? Will you be willing to support, let's say, if Netanyahu won't be able to form a government, will you support another primary for the Likud? The Likud chose its leader in primaries, and if you don't know, the Likud voted for Menachem Begin between the years 48 to 1977, and he was never elected once until 77, and we kept supporting Begin time after time. So this result test is not the only test. We have a direction, we have a path, we have a decision. I think that there won't be a choice. If, God forbid, we reach this situation, hopefully we won't, then we'll have to be flexible about a national unity government. One of the flexibilities on this matter will have to do with the question who will serve as prime minister first. Do you think, considering the fact that he has withdrawn his immunity request, the prime minister, and his trial will start over the next few months, the justification that the Likud will be first in this rotation, is that a condition you need to continue to pursue?
Wait, let's see. Let's see us win the third elections. There's a good chance for this. We're at 60 seats without Lieberman in April. We can get to 61. I hope that we get to that. It depends, of course, on the percentage of voters on the right and those within the Likud party, of course. But if for whatever reason we don't reach that number, and of course I hope very much that we will, I promise that I'll come back and interview with you again, and I hope that the audience will be just as friendly as it is now. Then I hope that in the annual conference next year will be after the election campaign, because if I recall, last year we were already in a campaign. But thank you very much to Minister Galant. Thank you.